Hello, folks. I hope you're having a great day today. Hey, today I want to take a look at the next chapter in my Huntington's disease. And what I want to take a look at is kind of my mental diminishments over time. As a reminder, I am somebody who is in my 7th year in Huntington's disease. Huntington's disease is a neurological genetic condition that you inherit from your parent. It's a dominant gene, so typically if one of your parents has it, that means you're going to have a 50-50 chance of having it. Because it's a brain type thing, you're not guaranteed to have it at the same sort of level of intensity as your parents have it. If they had it light, you could have it much worse, or vice versa. So there are some levels to it. You're probably going to get it at about the same time, but how it interacts with you and your body, everybody's neurology is different. So it's going to look different. And what I want to do today is take a look at kind of my own mental degradation that's happened over my first 7 years with the condition. My mother was a great person. She had the condition. She died when I was in junior high, in 8th grade. About a week before her birthday, when she was just about to turn 45. She was 44. And almost at 45 years of age, and she passed away one morning in the autumn time in October when I was at school. She passed away from a heart condition that had caused as a result of her HD. Her heart was started to give out. It was going irregularly, and she passed away from that, unfortunately and tragically, when I was still very young. And she had Huntington's disease most of the life that I remember, because she had it for about 8 years before she passed from it. Well, I've had it for 7 years, and for me, it's gone a lot less slowly than it did for her. She was already using utensils to eat with. She was already doing things like that, whereas myself, I'm not nearly to that part, at least not yet. So what I want to do is kind of talk a little bit about how the sort of intellectual aspects of the degradation of my HD have gone so far. For me, that's the biggest fear, because at the end of the day, my body isn't what defines me, it's what my mind is, my mental capacity. And that's always been where I go to for pleasure. I read, as you can see, because I'm recording this in front of a library, right? I read. I'm very passionate about reading. I'm very passionate about talking, about gaming, and those sorts of things. And I'm actually going to record some channels for you later on about what it's like to game, and how my gaming has changed as a person with HD, because I think a compelling aspect. What happens when your hobby is impacted by your condition with HD is, I think, an important kind of conversation point to have. But today I just want to look instead at my mental degradation, how my mind has been dropped as a start of this. Now, I talked a little bit about my mom. Even when she was at her worst, she was still knocking out a book a day. She loved Harlequin romances, and she would read these little trashy romance novels, and she would still read a book a day. Now, they were thin, little Harlequin romances. They're about this big. They probably had about 100 and some pages in them, so maybe 120 pages. And she would oftentimes we were poor. We were living on free and reduced meals in Boone County, West Virginia. We didn't have a whole lot of money. Most of the people in our community didn't either. But she would regularly read all these books, and she would go back to some of the ones and reread them for pleasure. And now that I'm in Huntington's disease, I understand that. I understand what that's like. I understand the need to kind of sometimes retreat and get away from it all, so that you can kind of, spend some time away from thinking about the condition, because I think about the condition literally every minute. I'm not doing something, my mind isn't being involved with it, at least once or twice a minute, sometimes more often. Every sentence I say, every conversation I have with somebody, every video I record, every minute I'm thinking about the condition in my head. I'm seeing it on the screen, in the field back, right? It's a constant reminder. Everything that I'm doing has this constant reminder, right? So I think talking about my own mental degradation is an important part. But she still was reading and knocking out. She was an incredibly intelligent woman. And even at her worst, she was still reading very, very quickly. Harlequin romances were her sort of thing that she would do in order to get away from it all and unwind. Totally understand. So for me, I was born lucky. When I was tested for my IQ at a young age, it came back that I was 144. Now, for those of you who might not know, 145 is genius level. 100 means that you have an average intelligence. Although a lot of people will have between 100 and 115 or so, we have a higher average intelligence now with a lot of our people than we used to. But still, most people kind of think of 100 as an average level intelligence. So my own intelligence, therefore, is coming in, used to be at 144 when I was a kid. When I was in college, I was a junior, and I was looking at things I wanted to do, and I had it retested because I wasn't sure what I wanted to do, and so it was just a part of tests that I did with some counselors on campus at WVU in Morgantown that I went to, because, again, I wasn't sure what path I wanted to follow, and I also wasn't sure if my Huntington's disease would be an important part of that conversation. So I started to think about getting a test to find out, which I would do the next year as a senior. But as a junior, I had some of these tests with the on-campus folks, and it came back at 146, so it had improved too. So an average roughly of 145, or right at genius level. I'm smart. I've met many people that are smarter, that are sharper, that are faster. I'm not the smartest person I've ever met, but I was born well when it came to my mental faculties, and this has always been where I have drawn my greatest identity from, my mental aspects, whether it was chasing games, conversations with people, pushing myself mentally. I had great grades. I have 2 master's degrees. One of my master's degrees was in public administration. I got right after I graduated from college. Stayed at WVU. I have like a 3.9 GPA from it. I got a couple of B minuses. And 1 B plus. The rest of them were all A's. And then I went back to grad school after my Huntington's disease had started, just a few years ago, in the early stages, and it already started. And I went back and I got even better grades at a seminary out in King of Prussia, Pennsylvania, Palmer Theological Seminary, and I got a master's degree in theological studies there. So I went back. And I would be happy to do so again. I had a higher GPA there. It was a 3.95 there than I had previously for my first place. And then I also was taking, I was at my most previous job was at Spring Hill College down in Mobile, Alabama. And while I was there, I was also affording myself the opportunity to take a free class each semester I could take for free as a part of being there in their theology program. And I was working on a Master's of Arts in Theology there too. Which would help to create the academic rigmarole for me to then pursue a PhD if I wanted to. So that's kind of where I was, and I was still getting A's in those classes too, and this is just a few years ago. So I still have a lot of my mental faculties. I took recently some tests, again, just last week and over the last few weeks, and my average IQ has seemed to have dropped from 145 to about 122. Some of the tests come in the high 120s and some of them in the low, like 110, 112 area. I think it depends on the type of tests that look at things like pattern recognition. I seem to do much better in than tests that test how quickly I can answer questions and those sorts of things. So it definitely seems like over 7 years since I started, my IQ has dropped from about 145 to about 122. Which means after about another 7 years, assuming that the rate stays the same, I would expect to have an IQ of about 100. And about another 7 years after that, assuming I was still alive, and again, assuming that the rate of decay is the same, my IQ would drop to about 80 or so, roughly. So I would be looking at a continuing drop in my IQ. Again, I was lucky. I was born smarter, and I was just lucky in that regard. And so while I have noticed some of my thinking resources have slowed down, and particularly when it comes to me giving a quick answer, a quick response to something, those for me have been some of the biggest issues. I'll also sometimes just make mistakes. I'll say the wrong word. I'll say a word that wasn't the word I intended. That happens pretty regularly, actually. Sometimes I have this weird quirk, and when I've mentioned it to other people with HD, they're like, I haven't done that yet, or haven't gotten to a place like that yet. But it's this weird quirk. I'll think about something in my mind, and I'll imagine it in my mind, and then my mouth will say the exact opposite of what I was thinking. For example, I'm going to Cape Verde over in West Africa. It's about a couple of 100 miles west of Senegal, a few islands. I'm going there next month for spring break to hang out, to visit the area. I'm still doing 2 international trips every year. And when I was telling somebody about where Cape Verde is, I was thinking in my mind the map of Africa, and I was thinking on the west coast. I was envisioning the west coast right off of Senegal, but I said east. I wasn't thinking of east. I didn't intend to say east, but I said it. And I said it's on the east coast of Africa. It's not. It's not by the Horn of Africa. It's the completely wrong side of the continent. This happens actually pretty regularly. I'll find myself doing this at least once or twice a week, where I meant to set up, but instead I'll say down. Where I've meant to say left, instead I'll say right. Happens all the time. And so that's one weird quirk that happens for me. But again, I was born lucky. I'm still finishing my work before the end of the workday. Yeah, it's a little bit longer for me to do emails, documents, those sorts of things, and working to a deadline as much as possible. But I'm still getting things done early. I'm still having, not a full eight hours of work in my workday. I'm still having time when I'm like twiddling my thumbs thinking, okay, I got done with my work hours before the end of the workday. It's still happening. It's not as fast as it used to be, but it's still happening. The people I work with still look at me, even new people who just came in years into my HD, still look at me as somebody who's really smart in the office. I'm still seen as, the smart guy in the office, those sorts of things. So I still have that sort of connection and awareness with people. I'm still detail-oriented when I want to be. When I focus my attention on something, then I'll have it. But my other major issue I'm having is that it's hard for me to multitask. I used to be great at multitasking. I used to be great at remembering things. If I would make a commitment to something, and then I would just remember it. I wouldn't have to write it down. If my boss asked me to do something in a one-on-one, or an email, or a call on the phone, I would do it, and then I would have it done. I wouldn't have to write down the tasks. I wouldn't have to schedule them. Now my schedule is incredibly detailed, incredibly ordered. If you look at my schedule, it's got color coding and different assignments here for different things, and I'll have color coded for different things. And every hour in my workday is now scheduled in my calendar. It's a very different calendar. I didn't even keep a calendar 10 years ago. Now my calendar is the most detailed, color-coded, oriented calendar, and that's because I need to do that in order to make sure that I don't forget something. Just last week, I had a follow-up doctor's appointment, and I forgot that I had it. And I came into work, and it was at the same time that work began, and I forgot. So I had to order an Uber, call them up and say, hey, I'm sorry I got caught. I'll be a little late, and then I headed out. And that was the first time I'd forgotten something major. But again, these things are happening. I'm forgetting things. And even though I'm still at 122 IQ, overall, on average, I feel like I'm more of an absent-minded professor, 122 IQ, than I used to be. And those things are becoming more and more common in my life. I'm forgetting things more, and I'm having difficulty multitasking. I need to become, if I'm focused on something and my boss comes in and wants to start talking about something else, I'm more commonly saying, hey, let me finish on this, and then I'll give you my full attention, which is not something that he is used to. He's used to just me or somebody else being able to multitask, being able to put aside what I was taking a deep dive into, and then, focus on him, give him full attention, and then go back to what I was doing. But I have to go back and remember. I have to refresh myself. So if I'm taking a deep dive into something, I'll regularly be like, hey, hold on a moment, and let me finish this, or let me finish this email. Or somebody told me, like, hey, I forgot to clock myself out today, one of the staff I supervise. Before I'd be like, I would just remember that, and the next time I had available, I would log into our software and clock them out of their shift. But now I have to have them email me or write it down because I'm in the middle of putting out an email or I'm in the middle of doing something. I have to focus on that, and now I need that written reminder to remind myself. So I have noticed that I have diminished from my previous 145 down to 122. And I've noticed a change in several different ways that I manage my things and manage my life, sort of, when it comes to Huntington's disease. But I wanted to share that with you in case these were some things you were doing or some tips or tricks that might work for you if you're somebody with HD. It also helps to understand where people from HD are coming from when they're doing some of these things. So I wanted to kind of put that out there and kind of say, and again, this is what is happening with me. But again, as I said at the beginning, we're all in different places, right? We all have, Huntington's disease affects all of us in different ways. The average person with Huntington's disease these days has it for 20 years. My mom had it for 8, right? I'm 7 in, and I'm going to have it for at least, if I don't have it for double digits, I'll be shocked, right? If I only get to at least 15 years before I die, I would be very, very surprised, right? It's going much slower and better for me than it did for my mom. So again, I was born lucky twice. One, with the fact that I had such a high IQ to begin with, coming into my HD. And then second, the fact that my genetic condition isn't as bad as it was for my mother. So I've been born lucky twice, not just once. But again, I wanted to share that with you. Please feel free to let me know what some comments you have or some takeaways or anything you'd like to talk about. I'm happy to talk with you about that more. If you like this video, please feel free to hit that subscribe button. I do a weekly reviews as a part of this channel, and also on each Wednesday I like to record for you a different aspect of my condition in HD so you can follow along and we can talk about a number of topics that I think people with HD really want to have out there and talk about and discuss. And I'm lucky enough that my IQ started high enough and it's been slow enough of a slide that I'm still able to provide cogent content 7 years in. So I want to do that for people so I can kind of give an inside view of that for people. I'm very passionate about being transparent and letting people know where they are. And finally, if you watch this video all the way to the end, I just want to thank you for taking some time out of your day. We all have busy days, busy lives, and so many things happening. So the fact that you spent this time with me, that's very humbling, and I appreciate that. Thanks again.